Musical Talk, the UK independent musical theatre podcast.
Hello, welcome to Musical Talk. My name is Nick Hudson. I'm delighted to be sitting virtually across from, I guess you could say, a kind of lyrical hero of mine. I will quote, kind of, before we introduce David, two of my favourite bits of rhyming, not that I've ever heard, really. One is, "You're about to take that siesta stone, but don't request a padre. Rest assured that I'll say mass. Try a final meal of tacos on a plate of beans mañana. Odds are they are gonna give you gas." And who else could... just that wonderful alliteration in Hercules. Folks lined up just to watch him flex, and this perfect package packed a pair of pretty pecs. We are joined here by the legendary David Zippel. David, welcome to Musical Talk. How's that for an intro?
Thank you, Nick, and what a lovely introduction.
Thank you. How are things going? I mean, because it's been... obviously, the elephant in the room is the C word. Obviously... Cinderella, just before we started recording, we talked about that is having its opening day very, very soon. The Andrew Lloyd Webber musical here in London. What was it like writing a musical, I guess, virtually, or were you across in England for that? Tell us all about how that came to be.
Well, we started pre-COVID. We started in January of 2019. And we wrote our first draft pretty quickly. We were done we started in the middle of January, and I think it was in the middle of April that we sent what we had to the copier and did a little reading of it in May of 2019, and it went really well. And then we were proceeding to work on it. We had other projects, but we were going to get back in the fall, and we worked a little more in person over that period of time. And we were about to do a workshop in March of 2020. And in fact, I was in town. I was in London because City of Angels was playing the West End. It was in previews. It was a revival. Mm-hmm. And it was a kind of a zhuzhed up version of what had happened at the Donmar 5 years earlier. It had been intended to move, but when we had a theater, we didn't have the cast. When we had the cast, we didn't have a theater. And as that happens, it took 5 years to put it back together, but we had an amazing cast. And Vanessa Williams was playing the femme fatale and was spectacular. And so we were doing that, and we were supposed to open, and the following day, and we were also supposed to have a workshop for Cinderella for a month, where we would actually stage large sections of it and work on it. And then COVID happened. And so everything shut down. The workshop had one day. I had left the day before because the only way to get back to America was to leave when I left. I think there were a few more days of flights, but not many. And it was sort of like Miss Saigon, everybody.
The helicopter came.
Or Afghanistan, I'm afraid to say.
Yes. And what was it like from then on?
Well, from then on, we decided that we would still have our workshop. We just wouldn't have actors. So we worked pretty much every day, 5 or 6 days a week, virtually. I was in California, so there was an 8-hour time difference. And I would usually we would meet at 9 o'clock my time, 5 o'clock the UK time, and we would work on our project and then and talk about what we wanted to accomplish. And then I would have all day to write it and send it to them, and we would the next day work on it during the day and send their thoughts to me. And we sort of went back and forth for about 3 months till we felt like we really had the show in good shape. And it was during that time that Andrew started doing virtual recording. So he had orchestras in various places, and Carrie Hope Fletcher had a studio in her house. And so we were able to hear some of what we had created in real time, only no one was in the room together. In fact, there's a great photograph of Emerald Fennell sitting outside of Andrew's house by the window while he plays for her, because they weren't allowed to be in the same room.
Yes, I think I saw that video somewhere. It was on Andrew Lloyd Webber's TikTok or something hilarious like that. But and our friend John Sweeney has just joined us from New York. Hi, John. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Good.
Sorry about the delay. I apologize.
That's all right. We're just talking about Cinderella and what it was like creating a musical well, kind of refining the musical, I guess, during lockdown. Were you able to come to London at all, David, during the kind of process of being in the theatre?
Yes. So obviously it was postponed several times. It was supposed to have been a year ago this August that we were going to open. Actually, July was one of our first dates. And so when we finally decided to go into production, I showed up during rehearsals and was in London for 9 weeks, which was great fun. And it was exciting to see the show come together. I think visually it's astonishingly beautiful.
There's one... Sorry, carry on, David.
No, and but when they postponed it again, when we closed on we were supposed to open on the 19th of July, and because of a positive test in the cast, we shut down. And Andrew decided that he was just going to close it for a while till the rules changed. So it just didn't make sense. I'd already extended my stay a couple of times, and so I went back to California, which is where I am now, and the press opening is Wednesday, but it just didn't make sense for me to fly back for one night. So,
well, it's received. I know some reviewers, I think, went in naughtily and gave a review, but it was 5 stars. So that's all that matters to you. And I'm going
to put your embargo. I'm glad they didn't do it to slate us.
No. I mean, in Cinderella, there's one moment which is such a beautiful theatrical moment, and I'm sure you know the bit I mean. And it's only something that can happen in the Gillian Lynne Theatre. Are the seats moving? And that's such a kind of weird, wonderful thing for a theatre to be able to do. But it works so well in the moment of the story. And I was thinking, watching the show, and Andrew really knows how to put on great theatre. He has a great kind of everything, the big picture, doesn't he?
He certainly is a great showman. And I do think, he put this together. He brought us all together, invited everyone to the party, including Gabriella, our designer, who is, again, I think, astonishingly brilliant. And she used the pieces of and how the theater works so brilliantly. It's one of those goosebump moments, absolutely.
And you've done Women in White, obviously. What to you the differences? What are the differences in writing lyrics for British singers and British characters compared to the very American City of Angels and Hercules?
Well, I think ultimately it's the lyricist's job to make it sound like one person wrote the whole thing. So the tone of the book will definitely reflect how the lyrics are written and how the characters speak. Woman in White was a Victorian novel, and so the tone of the novel really influenced what Charlotte Jones wrote, and then what I wrote as well. With Cinderella, Emerald Fennell had this concept and this idea of how to reinvent the story, and her characters were very three-dimensional and clear, and it made it easy for me to turn them into to when they sang, to make them sound the same as when they spoke.
But is there kind of different words? I mean, are you aware of the kind of the differences in stresses that we use compared to the American tongue and kind of grammar? And is that
absolutely? And I think I've been coming to London for 40 years, so I've absorbed a lot of it, and a lot of it just seems natural to me. But there are times when we're definitely two countries divided by one language. Rhymes, and I remember in The Woman in White, I had rhymed pastel at one point and realized it was pastels in England, and so I had to fix that. And there are things where people point things out to me if I missed it, but I have a pretty good ear, and so I don't miss too much in that regard.
And as you said at the beginning, you do some of the most satisfying rhymes that I've ever heard, and it's so, when I see your name, David, on the credits, I can sit there in comfort, because I dabble in lyrics myself, and nothing annoys me, and it seems to be getting worse nowadays, is pop rhyming, and it's heading into musical theatre, and it's like, ooh, but Cinderella, I was comfortable to be able to sit and listen to your lyrics. I've actually been cursed with City of Angels. I'd never been able to see it, because when I was ready to go and see the the London one you mentioned, it just didn't happen. So I know I'll see the show one day. I love murder mysteries. So my friends who have seen it, they've always been very kind of coy about the plot, never really revealing too much, but I do like that. I want to go back to the beginning, really, because the reason we're talking today is because of our good friend Jonathan Cohen, who kind of introduced us. Tell us about Better with a Band.
Well, this was, I think, 1986, and David Kernan had a series at the Donmar called Show People, and I had done a review of my songs. It's sort of a bizarre way to begin a career, but I began my career with a career retrospective. There was a time in New York where reviews were popular, and I had seen Starting Here, Starting Now, which I thought was just wonderful. Maltby and Shire wrote a series of songs. I think that's playing in London now, or it recently played there. And I thought, well, I could do that. So I got 4 singers together, and I worked with a director that I like to work with, and we put a little review together called It's Better with a Band. And it was called that because the only song I had written that anyone had really heard of at that point was a song I wrote for Barbara Cook at her Carnegie Hall concert. Sure. And it required a band. So we did the opening number with the concept that 4 people came on expecting a band, and they were singing, waiting for the instruments to come in. And when they didn't come in, they start improvising themselves. And it was quite charming. And fortunately, the show got great reviews and launched my career. So David Kernan heard about it and offered me the chance to bring Nancy Lamotte, who's an American singer who I just revered and who became one of my best friends. She and my muse, she came with me, and then we did it at the Donmar with Jackie. Oh my God, I love her so much. Cleo Lane and John Dankworth's daughter, Jackie Dankworth. Yep. And 2 other wonderful singers, Graham Bickley and Shezway Powell, and it went really well. So it was a great introduction to London. Oh, and Jonathan was playing we were the late night show, and the early show was Side by Sondheim, a revival of that. And Jonathan and Stuart Pedler were the pianists on that, and that's how I met Jonathan.
So he would hang around. He would hang around and see the show afterwards. I wish I could have been there. You know, I mean, we have to talk about City of Angels. I know you have mentioned it, but tell me how that came to be, because it's a pretty was that your first musical?
No, it was certainly my first Broadway musical. I had written a couple of things. I had done a musical version of the Just So stories,
right? That
played off Broadway, that did not run terribly long, although I still love the score.
Yeah. And
I had written a musical version of Kaufman and Hart's Once in a Lifetime, the play about the change of silent pictures to talking pictures, and that to this day I'm still trying to get on its feet. And but I met Cy Coleman through I had a kind of bizarre career. I went to law school, and while I was there, I met a theater attorney who offered to help me, and one of my classmates, his dad was a theater attorney, and he represented Cy Coleman, and they heard my songs and called him and said, "You should really write with this guy." And it took several years for Cy to think that was a good idea, but he did, and that was really the beginning of my career.
Do you think Cy Coleman is one of the greatest pastiches of Broadway?
Unquestionably, one of the all-time greats. Whether it was pastiche, whether it was just, he could write in any style, and you can't really pigeonhole him because he was such a musical chameleon. Some writers, you hear the song, oh my God, that's, and who wrote it. With Cy, he almost every time he would reinvent himself.
And I'm a big jazz fan, and there's City of Angels has some of the most complicated. I mean, that prologue with all that scatting, it's like something that never been heard before on Broadway, I was guessing.
Well, that was part of what made us so excited about writing the show, which there had never really been there'd been jazzy scores, and in fact, Cy had written some, but there had never been a true jazz score until City of Angels, I believe. And that was our intention, was to, so almost all of it is jazz inspired. And it's funny, you said you haven't seen the show. the album is, I'm very proud of it, but you really don't get a true sense of the show until you see the songs in context, because it is such a integrally written show that the story unfolds in such an unusual way that the songs on their own do not convey all of that. So the book by Larry Gelbart is really funny, but also incredibly smart. And I hope someday you'll get to see it. It's like listening to that score is like touching an elephant with a blindfold on. You know, you feel the different parts, but you really won't know what the whole thing looks like until you take the blindfold off.
I'm sure John has seen it. So, John, what are your memories of seeing City of Angels for the first time?
Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm embarrassed to say I did not, for some reason, did not see it on Broadway. I did see a very good college production at Hofstra years ago, which the show is dazzling. And I completely concur with what David says. I remember feeling the show really is of a piece. The score does not work without Gelbart's book and Coleman's music. It's kind of a perfect blend, I think, of a full theater piece. And I just want to know when we're going to get it back in New York, because we're desperate for something smart and fun again.
Would it work?
Well, first we have to get Broadway up and running again.
Well, yes. Well, that's very true.
Would it work, David, as a movie? Obviously, because it's
absolutely. And over the years, people have come to us and some rather big directors, and it happens and then doesn't. So, and some of that depends on whether musicals are in or out of fashion too.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Speaking of movies, how did you go from City of Angels to Alan Menken and Disney?
Well, Alan and I had written songs in the early 80s. The aforementioned Nancy Lamott used to sing a song that Alan wrote the music and lyrics for, and I thought the song was great. It was a song called Lie to Me. And I met Alan at one of her shows and said, man, I think you're great. I'd love to collaborate with you. And Alan has always had multiple collaborators and said, sure. So, excuse me. So we wrote songs at that point. We wrote some songs for a Hal Prince review and just odd songs now and then over the years. And then Alan and Howard Ashman did Little Mermaid, and that became huge. And when Howard died, Alan called me and asked me if I'd be interested in working with him, and that's how it happened.
Did you feel that you were stepping in, like Tim Rice, obviously, when he stepped in to help with Aladdin? Did you feel that you had the shadow of Howard looking over you? Because your pun writing and stuff is very similar to that of Howard. Were you aware of that, or were you just being David?
Well, I knew Howard and liked him and admired him so much, but I think I was too busy trying to do my job to really notice what a huge opportunity it was in some ways. I think I became more aware of how global it all was in the middle of writing it, because sorry, did someone say something?
No, sorry. No.
I can't, David. It's
fine. We were we wrote songs and storyboarded them and put them together and would look at the film as it came together. And it was during that time that I was invited to some of the Disney openings of earlier films, because it took 2 years. And when I saw the scale at which they were launched around the world, it was like, oh my, this is, I have a responsibility to be good.
Are there any cut songs from Hercules that you can tell us about?
Oh yeah. There's a song, we wrote a song, two cut songs of significance. There was a song that Meg sang, it was the 11 o'clock number, a ballad called I Can't Believe My Heart. And it was a song where she realizes that Hercules is a good guy, and she's her cynical girl who, and it was a song we all thought was going to be the hit, and we're really excited about it. But when we showed the film with the storyboards, we realized that it was a little late in the movie for a ballad. And so we went back and reinvented it the moment and added the muses and wrote "I Won't Say I'm in Love," which is much more of a wink, and that turned out really well. But then suddenly we didn't have a ballad anymore. So we went back to the first song we wrote, which was the I Want song, the song where Hercules expresses his desires. And it was a song called Shooting Star that we loved. And, but because we needed a song that would actually be a potential pop song, and we thought we had to reinvent that moment. So we chucked that moment. This is very late in the making of a movie. And we wrote Go the Distance. And that worked out pretty well.
Which also references Like a Shooting Star, I Will Go the Distance. So it's a nice kind of little Easter egg or shooting star you chucked in there. And then it went to obviously Disney are very hot at the moment on kind of bringing things back. They've been bringing things back to the theatre for a while. And then a couple of years ago, it played randomly in your neck of the woods in California. Is that correct? The Public Works Theatre?
No, in Central Park.
Central Park,
sorry. Yeah.
Right.
What was that like?
Really
Did we get any cut songs returning, or can you say anything about that show?
We wrote 5 new songs for it. We wrote 6 new songs, but we only had room for 5 in this version of it. And it was just so much fun to go back to that show with Alan. We had a great time. And
is there a future? Do we know? Is it getting the inevitable Disney remake to live action? What are you allowed to say anything about Hercules' future?
I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that we're working on. The Public Works version had 250 people in it, so it was a huge pageant in addition to being a show, and we've gone back and are restructuring the show so that it can be done with a normal theater size cast, and hopefully we'll try it out somewhere in the next year or year and a half. It really all depends on scheduling.
A friend, a co-presenter of mine has one question, and I'm just going to read it verbatim that he sent to me. In the constrained rules of lyric writing, how do you reflect and echo the real world versus the fake world in City of Angels?
Oh, that's a really good question. Well, it's really all story driven. The character there are times when in the way the show unfolds, you see the film that is being made and the real life people who are making the movie, and you see the writer as he's writing the screenplay, and it's funny. It takes more time to describe it than to sit through it, because it sounds complicated, but it's really quite elegant and unfolds in a really clear way. But so I think the characters the show is double cast. So you'll meet people in real life, and then 2 scenes later, you'll see the character they inspired in the movie. Or sometimes you'll see a character in the film, and a scene or 2 later, you'll see who in real life was the inspiration for that character. So there's definitely parallels. And so I don't think there's a huge difference in how they speak. Although clearly the detective who's not double cast, he speaks very film noirish, picturesque language like Dashiell Hammett or something out of a Humphrey Bogart movie.
You're a director yourself, David. Which of your works would you like to step forward and direct? You've
one of the shows that I did that I thought was was more like a double and not a home run was The Goodbye Girl. And I would really like a crack at that, because I really think it's a charming romantic comedy, and it's genuinely funny, and Neil Simon's book is really funny, and I think I know how to make that work. So I'd love to take a crack at that. In fact, I'm working on that.
And that was with Marvin Hamlish, wasn't it?
Beautiful score by Marvin. Absolutely.
What was it like working with him?
He was fun. He was hyper enthusiastic, and we had a good time. We'd written a few movie songs together, but we had never written a musical at that point, and it was just a joy to work with him. I miss him. He was a great guy.
John,
I've been really lucky working with masters. I mean, Alan Menken, Andrew Lloyd Webber, Marvin Hamlish, Cy Coleman.
I mean,
I
that's
can't
it there.
believe
You can just die happy now, I think. Um,
I'd like to wait a little while, but yes.
yes. John, do you have any other a question?
Well, I had one quick question. I love Goodbye Girl, and I loved City of Angels. The college production that I saw, and I also loved Woman in White. And I was just curious: do you set a different set of rules for yourself when you're doing a show like Woman in White that's almost completely through composed? Where I'm assuming you worked from the book and you created your own libretto. Was it more difficult to the novel is so complex and so involved. Was it a large challenge to kind of whittle it down so that people would pick up on the story, in one shot, as opposed to reading the whole book from beginning to end?
Well, that's a really good question. And what intrigued me about The Woman in White was that it was through composed, which scared the hell out of me because I had never done anything like that. And of course, that's a way that Andrew likes to work. And we worked really closely with Charlotte Jones, the playwright. And sometimes she would write complete scenes as if it were a play, and then I would set them. That would be at least, or from an outline in some cases where there weren't actual dialogue. And sometimes I would use ideas that came from those scenes, or sometimes just the dramatic construction of those scenes. But it was a way, excuse me, that I'd never worked before. So I found that fascinating. And this show, A Cinderella, also has large sections that are through composed, where some of them are songs, but many of them are scenes. And that was another situation where I worked closely with Charlotte, with Emerald Fennell, who's a remarkable writer.
Do you like murder mysteries, David? Because you've done 2 of them, which is more than most. Because we did an episode ages ago, and we kind of established that murder mysteries only work, or mysteries only work if they're from a comic point of view, like Curtains, for example. What do you think the rules to make a good mystery work within a musical theatre world are?
Well, it's funny. I didn't set out to write murder mysteries. City of Angels was a chance to work with Cy Coleman and Larry Gelbart, and I loved the film noir world, and I loved the opportunity to write a jazz score. But it's interesting because the scene where the denouement, where it all comes together, is not sung. That's a spoken scene that's just prior to the end of the show, and it's very funny, and it wraps it all up. The Woman in White, I think in some ways became more of a romantic story than a murder mystery. Music adds romance in a lot of cases, or emotion. And so I think every piece is its own unique creation. But I do think you're right. To sing a murder mystery is challenging.
And to write a murder mystery as well is challenging, because and then putting it to songs, and even more so. I wanted to ask you about, obviously we mentioned Cy Coleman, and he's a wonderful composer, but the whole pastiche element of music. If he were pastiching a specific composer from the jazz era, would you look at the lyrics of the song that he was using as a reference? Is it possible to pastiche lyrics?
I suppose it is. We didn't really use prototypes in that show. So I just wrote jazzy songs, and I would sometimes start with a title or a section song and send it to him, and he'd write music to that. Sometimes he would write a theme or an entire song, and then I would set that. But we weren't copying anyone in particular in that instance. There are times when we have said, "Oh, gee, I'd like to write a song like X."
Yeah.
When you're writing a show, or a song that functions in the way that X functions. But we didn't do that on City of Angels. Although, now that you mentioned it, You Can Always Count on Me, which is kind of a one-off song in the show. It's a song that's a duet sung by this one person playing 2 different characters. And I was very, I thought, the song that Cy Coleman wrote for Seesaw, Nobody Does It Like Me, was an ideal kind of a song. And I mentioned that to him. And there are echoes, I think, it doesn't sound the same, but it's that kind of a number. So yeah, I guess does that answer your question?
Yes, but I wanted to ask you, because you brought something else up in my mind. Where did the wonderful idea of You're Nothing Without Me come from, of having the writer saying to the character, you know, you're nothing without me, you wouldn't exist without me? Was that your idea, or was it the book writers? Or
that was my idea.
It's such a clever song, and again, full of so many satisfying rhymes, like ink well and think well, and you know, lots of wonderful things. Anything in the future coming up apart from Cinderella that you'd like to discuss, David?
Just talking about a few projects to start. And Hercules, of course, we're going to continue working on it. That's it for now.
How exciting! I long thought Hercules should be on stage, because it just sings that whole score, doesn't it? And you know,
it's a marvelous score.
And hopefully Hades may have a song now.
He does. John, were you able to see it in the park? I know it was really hard.
I could not get in at all. I tried several times. It was not in the stars.
There were family members I couldn't get in. It was that hard because it was only for a week, but it was exciting. It really went well.
Do you I mean, that's what Disney are great at, is they have this kind of mammoth ability just to put things. I mean, they're touring. Bed Knobs and Broomsticks has just started touring here. We've got Beauty and the Beast coming back, and I saw Mary Poppins the other night. You know, so Disney, I've always believed they have been, ever since they started, the biggest pushers of musical theatre, I think, still, as regards a media company. And it's exciting they're still so supportive of it. They're still so supportive of it, aren't they, David?
Well, they do it well, and they care. When Alan and Howard kind of rebooted animated musicals, they wrote with the same seriousness and intensity that you would write a stage musical. And so a lot of the best theater writing during the 90s was what they did for animated films. So it makes complete sense that Disney would pursue this and put some of these shows on the stage.
And I obviously, away from the last, apart from Cinderella, the last place I heard your words in a live environment, you might laugh at this, David, was at Walt Disney World in their amazing fireworks show called Happily Ever After, which ends with Go the Distance, with a massive choir singing it. So I don't know if you were even aware of that, but, you know, sort of 60,000 people a night were here.
And I think I adapted the lyric for them, but I never heard it. So I hope it was good.
It was absolutely wonderful. John, anything else you want to add?
No, but no. Just again, my apologies for coming in so late.
That's all right. Don't worry, we didn't miss you. And Cinderella, soon. Well, by the time this episode goes out, open at the Gillian Inn Theatre. It's, you know, it's a wonderful show. The seats move, and that it's. I know we laugh, but that is a glorious moment.
I hope we move people in more ways than one.
Yes. Any news of it possible transferring to Broadway, do you think, or are they going to wait and see what the situation is?
Well, I think it's a little early, but I'm sure, knowing my collaborators, we all very much would like to see it happen in New York.
It does. I mean, I was thinking, though, before we end, would it need rewriting? Because it's very British, isn't it? And it's a lot of the gags, like I think there's like "your knob" is said at one point and things like that. Would it need tinkering with for the American New York audience?
There's really not a lot that would have to change. I mean, a few expressions here and there. I don't know. I wonder whether we'll do it with an English accent in America or not. I don't think we need to, but that's an interesting question, something to consider. I think its Englishness works here. It wouldn't work against it in the United States, but it would be easy to just tweak it ever so slightly, and you wouldn't know the difference.
Well, David, thank you so much for joining us on Musical Talk. I hope you've enjoyed talking to us as we have you.
Yes, thank you.
And we might have you on again in the future. David, I look forward to hearing more about Cinderella and Hercules, and thank you so much for talking to us, and all the best.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Musical Talk. To find out more about the world of Musical Talk, you can visit our website at musicaltalk.co.uk, where you'll find all our episodes, or you can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. Please follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Musical Talk.